Welcome to Global Express. This is where we discuss developments in our backyard and our immediate neighborhood and beyond. Do click on the Global Express icon in the new Indian Express and share the video. So, this week we're taking a closer look at Iran and details that are now emerging on the resurrection, so to speak, of the Islamic State Khorasan in the heart of Europe in Russia. But our primary focus is the ramifications of the missile attack on April 1st by Israel that leveled the building in the Syrian capital Damascus, adjacent to the Iranian embassy, that killed several top generals from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps who were based in Damascus. And we're looking at whether it could spark a wider conflict. A member of the Revolutionary Guards has admitted that a meeting was ongoing between Iranian intel officials and Palestinian Islamic Jihad members when the building was hit. And the attack is supposed to have eliminated the Quds commander in the region, General Mohammad Reza Zahedi, and two other very top generals who were coordinating Iran's proxy war on Israel. Zahedi is supposed to have overseen the Iran's covert operations in Syria and Lebanon. But Israel's justification, as always, is that it was a military building disguised as a civilian building. To us today on the Israel Iran US tango as we mark the 6 month anniversary since the October 7th attack is Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed, who has served as India's ambassador to Saudi Arabia twice and to the United Arab Emirates and Yemen. He's a prolific writer on the region and is author of the definitive book on the Middle East, West Asia at War. Thank you, Ambassador, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Also on the show is Adi Achint, who hosts the popular podcast Deaf Talks. He's held forth on the spread of Islamic jihadists from Central Asia and the Middle East into Europe. After the shocking attack in Moscow, it's been said that many of the Tajiks, Uzbeks, and the Kyrgyz who migrated to Russia are now being tapped by ISIS. Thank you, Adi, for coming on the show. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say about the resurgence of ISIS, given that Russia is blaming the West and the US had warned Moscow about what was coming.
Thank you, ma'am. Nice to be here.
So, question one. First, if I can come to you, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed. You know, the shadow war between Israel and Iran has been going on for some time now. Israel has assassinated many of Iran's military leaders, its nuclear scientists. Now it's gone for an IRGC building. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has threatened retribution. Iran's foreign minister, Hassan Amir Abdullahian, has said America must be held responsible. And Hezbollah's chief, Hassan Nasrallah, has threatened Iranian retaliation. Now, why do you believe? I mean, there's been a retaliation attack by Israel on Ismail Haniya. He's lost his sons and grandsons. A very targeted attack in Gaza. Despite all of that, there has been no Iranian revenge attack. Why do you think that is so? I mean, not by the Hezbollah, not by the Houthis. Why have the Iranians held their fire?
Iran pursues a policy of what they call strategic patience. They recognize that in conventional terms, there is a very big gap between their capabilities and those of Israel, which is invariably supported by the United States. Iran is in no position to participate in a region-wide conventional war. It will be annihilated. This is precisely what the Americans and the Israelis have been wanting. As you know, consistently throughout Donald Trump's term, he was being encouraged by Netanyahu to provoke the Iranians so that there would be a region-wide conflagration and there would be a massive assault upon Iran from the United States as well as from Israel. Iran has no choice but to hold back. And therefore, you find that they are provoked constantly. They have, for example, their nuclear scientists are assassinated. Major terrorist attacks take place not only within Iran, but also in various other areas which are supportive of Iran. But they have to hold back because of the asymmetry in conventional capability. Iran says that they will retaliate in their own time and in
That's
their own.
right.
But yes, I agree that it is a very difficult decision to take. You have to be extraordinarily statesmanlike and very seriously restrained. In fact, this is what we have to ask ourselves. Why did
Mm-hmm.
Israel initiate such a major provocation in a region that is already extremely volatile?
Yes,
It
that is
was
a big question.
precisely it was precisely to encourage the Iranians to be angry and to hit back. And therefore, the Israelis were looking out for that. The main point to be noted is that from the Prime Minister Netanyahu's point of view, he was under tremendous pressure at that time. You remember that Biden had started speaking uh, very angrily against
That's right.
Netanyahu personally and against Israel, and had demanded an immediate ceasefire, and had even threatened that there would be a review of the relationship between the United States and Israel. He had made this statement. I'm not saying that he meant it seriously. He had made a large number of extremely foolish statements consistently, and therefore this was one of them. But the fact is that he had made this statement. It was important for Netanyahu to shift the focus
Away
from
from
Gaza
Gaza.
onto Iran. Because Iran is the one button you can press and you will get the Americans on board immediately. And that has worked. That has worked
But so
immediately.
President Biden, Mr. Ambassador, is basically had called up Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and told him to withdraw from Gaza. And following that testy conversation, we hear that the IDF did withdraw in substantial
None of
numbers
that
from
is
Gaza.
happening. It is Netanyahu who dictates the terms of the conflict.
Hmm.
It has been very clear what has happened. What have you actually seen on the ground? The head of CENTCOM has rushed to Israel
Yeah.
to discuss humanitarian assistance, which had been the original purpose of the visit, but to discuss coordination between the United States and Israel in the case of a conflict with the Iranians. That's what they're discussing today. Biden has made a statement saying that he fully supports Israel. No mention of immediate ceasefire, no mention of humanitarian assistance or anything like that.
But
The
wasn't
button
that
of
wasn't that talked
Iran that
about in
Israel
that
has pressed
conversation?
has worked.
So the conversation between Biden and Netanyahu, as soon as the humanitarian group, whatever it was called, was bombed, and they killed all those people, uh, you know, uh, it involved the U.S. telling Israel to
Yes,
enforce a ceasefire and bring humanitarian aid in.
absolutely correct. And that was before April 1. On
Ah,
April 1, the Iranian attack, both these attacks took place on the same day. Mark the
mm,
pattern, mark the sequence. You have the Israelis killing 7 people,
yes,
horror upon horror. 7 people are killed,
yeah,
and the American president says, I am heartbroken. This is when
yes,
32,000 Palestinians have been killed, 150 medical workers have been killed, 14, 15,000 children have been killed. But this man's heart breaks because of those 7 aid workers, because 5 of them come from countries that are American allies, Canada, Australia, and what have you. So his heart breaks and he starts making extreme remarks as he is wont to do. What does Netanyahu do? The master magician, the wily magician, he attacks Damascus and kills the Iranians, completely shifts all attention from those aid workers to Iran. And he has
that's right.
succeeded. And he has succeeded. So the attention
So,
span of the Americans, the heart has stopped bleeding immediately, by the way. Biden is not talking about any harm. What did he do? What did Netanyahu do? A few token actions, opened a few crossings, allowed certain trucks to go, and made this extremely false statement that this is a record supply. Did you see what the UN said? The UN said that full trucks go to the border, the Israelis remove half the stuff so
Yes,
that
yes,
half trucks are going into Palestine. They
that's
have
right. That's
declared
right. I believe that.
starvation conditions, famine conditions in North Gaza. The American
Yeah.
army is leading. The general is sitting, coordinating war with the Israelis, hoping against hope that the Iranians are stupid enough to initiate a conflict.
Now, can I come to you, Adi? There are reports of backroom talks going on in the Egyptian capital, Cairo, with Americans and Qataris. There are also, this is something you and I have talked about. Iran is also has a backroom channel with America. Could you tell us something about this? I mean, what are they trying to achieve? I mean, because can Iran does America actually believe that it can have a backroom channel going with Iran that will lead somewhere? Because the whole idea of this October 7th, attack on the kibbutz was basically to destroy any kind of rapprochement that was going to be built between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and or Iran and Saudi Arabia, or any kind of peace deal that would, benefit Israel.
Interestingly, I kind of look at the situation in a way that what we see is a very simple pattern emerging as far as global geopolitics is concerned. If I remember President Biden mentioning an axis at one time of Russia, Iran, and China. And
Yes,
we
he
see
did.
that, the axis is being engaged today. The world, if you look at it, is divided. I mean, there's a good old theory of the heartland and the rimland. I'm sure we are all aware of it. And the heartland today needs to be controlled, which is Russia. So the rimland needs to be lit on fire. So if you look at the rimland and you start from Ukraine, Israel, uh, Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan region, you've got China, which is pretty much getting cornered today with new pacts and stuff like that. And the only two regions which are out of war at the moment, active war, is Korea and India. So I see this as a pattern of engagement that I won't say the Americans, but the global deep state, as per se, which is trying to do to reestablish itself and basically reorder the world somewhere or the other. The Israeli attack, to my mind, was a very interesting lateral escalation for the American presence in Ukraine and the way that the Americans got the Russians stuck up. At the end of it, whatever said and done, the Russian war aims have still not been met. You could say that the Russians are going slowly, or the Americans are, or the Ukrainians are going slowly. Either ways, the ground reality is that the war aims are still pending. We see a lateral escalation. If you remember, initially China, Iran, and Russia, the trio came on hard on Israel. So there was some sort of a pattern that emerged there. And for me, in one of my videos somewhere in October, I had said Iran would be next on the menu. They
Hmm.
would need to go against China, which is the main this thing. They would need to kind of keep these two powers busy with
But
something of
China, because of China's rapprochement with Iran,
yeah,
it actually has two terminals in
yeah,
Chabahar.
yeah. So I call this the policy of a doorstep war. You create a war on somebody's doorstep so that he gets stuck in that and he's not able to kind of move out of their neighborhood to do exert its power. And if you look at it, the larger powers in the world that have capabilities have a doorstep war ready and waiting to be ignited. Look at us, we've got two of them. As far as the Iran this thing is concerned, is interesting to me because there are also backroom talks which are happening, as you asked, uh, between the Iranians and the Americans in Switzerland. If you
That's
remember,
right.
initially the Iranians had told the Americans that you are also liable for an attack. But today the Iranians have come down to the factor that we will only attack Israel. They have removed the Americans off the equation. And that's very interesting because there is some back and front dealing happening. I'll give you a small example. The Americans are talking to Ansar Allah from the Houthis and telling them that, listen, we'll legitimize you. We'll give you some money. We'll give you all that stuff, whatever you need. Stop the Red Sea action. And interestingly, what the Americans have started doing today and the West has started doing is the use of proxies. So in your introductory talk, you said ISKP, and the use of proxies has also given a second thought to Iran, which is something that is very interesting as emerging right now. You've seen a pattern emerging of attacks within Iran, which are similar in nature of the kind of attacks that are happening in Pakistan.
Hmm.
You have the Americans unofficially, one can't really pinpoint where, but we know the Americans have their presence in Balochistan today.
Can I
And
just
the
butt in for a
presence,
minute, Adi, just to ask you this? You know, this Arabic language news site, Jade
yeah.
Iran,
Mhm.
it said, according to an anti-Tehran government London-based website called Iran International, that Tehran has told Washington specifically that it will not retaliate. That if and on condition that America gets Israel to agree to a ceasefire.
Yeah.
So I
So
mean,
the
is Iran attempting to keep a conversation going with Washington? And what gives Washington, I mean, or the deep state as you call it, any reason to trust Iran will keep its
see,
word?
interesting part is that they've opened a second front for Iran, which Iran I don't think thought would happen. President Raisi came to Pakistan recently, I think a day ago. I'm sure he would have come and spoken to please stop this. The Jundullah, which is today known popularly as the Jaish-ul Adal, has been
Yes.
conducting really, really hard attacks, and that is creating a problem for the Iranians to look back. They're having to see inside when they're supposed to be looking outside. That's a problem. And these are not small scale attacks. They've been hitting hard. If you remember the Kerman attack where Qasem Soleimani is on the grave, people say 100, 200 people lost their lives. That's not a small thing. You look at the same way that they've made the Russians look inward suddenly with this massive attack in Moscow.
On
So the
the
use of
22nd of March. We'll get to that in a minute.
yeah, so
But
we'll
but
leave that right
but
now.
but
But
I
what
do
I
want to
feel,
know what
yeah,
makes the Americans trust the Iranian
it's not
to
a
keep
trust,
their
it's a give
word.
and take relationship. It's a give and take relationship. What the Americans are trying to do is to kind of bring Iran to a point of isolation, as the ambassador very clearly mentioned that Iran understands its military capability. Iran understands that its military capability is designed for defensive against an invasion. They've got rockets, they've got drones, they've got small caliber weapons which are designed for a defensive battle. The Iranians' geography, if you actually just open a map of Iran, you'll realize it's not an easy country to attack from anywhere. They're surrounded by mountain ranges and they've got valleys everywhere. So it's not an easy ground war to have. And you can actually hit hard. What the Americans are trying to do is trying to get rid of Iran from the equation. And if you deal with its proxies, and one of the things which I find very astonishing is that whenever the Hezbollah leader comes out to speak, the war is on. But the minute the mic goes off, the war is off. Hezbollah is not wanting to come out fully in terms of the battle because they've got their own legitimization issues there. And I again feel there is a backroom conversation happening over that side as well. So the Americans are trying to speak to the proxies directly. And that's very interesting to me because this is for the first time there's a certain legitimization of these proxy forces, which has not happened in history before. So they are trying to deal with these guys on that proxy note and put Iran in a place that it is difficult for Iran to take a decision as to what to be done next. As a matter of fact, there's a statement from one of a very popular geopolitical analysts from Iran, the Iran Observer, I'm sure you've seen. They're very hardline. They've put out a statement saying that we might not want to escalate.
Mm.
So obviously there's some give which is happening. Plus, the last point I'd like to make here is Iran also understands the current avenue of revenue for Iran is the 4 million barrels of oil that it sells to China every day. That goes through the Persian
That's
Gulf
right.
and comes out into the. That's a threat. Now, with the Fifth Fleet sitting in Bahrain and with the Indian Navy and many other navies there, that could be easily blockaded. So Iran has got multiple fronts of its own. I think it's going to take a tough time for them to. It's going to be a very tough decision. As
Ambassador,
far
if
as
I
the
can if I can come back to you, is the US going too easy on Iran then? I mean, we've all talked about, how America exited very hurriedly from Afghanistan, which basically emboldened Islamic State and Al Qaeda and affiliates across the world to rise up again because large parts of Afghanistan are not policed, and ISIS has got a free run. ISIS-K has a free run in large parts of Afghanistan, from which they could have expanded. But more importantly, Biden has been criticized for not seeing Iran the way that the US deep state sees it, as the world's number one state sponsor of terror. It
Absolutely.
slammed Biden for turning a blind eye to Iran's rapid missile program. I mean, the U.S. Department of Defense has issued, a paper which says that Iran can produce enough fissile material for a nuclear bomb in 12 days.
Yep.
Um,
They
I
have
mean, the
enough for
Fordo
three
nuclear
bombs.
complex.
They have enough for 3 bombs.
Well, that's exactly. I
So
was wondering, Ambassador, do you think that
now
the U.S. is not seeing Iran for the true threat that it poses to the region?
See,
I don't think so.
are you asking me or?
Well, both of you can come in, but let the ambassador
Yeah,
go first.
please, absolutely.
See, the American approach to West Asia is founded on two principles: total love for Israel and
Mhm.
total hate for Iran. Both of these are an integral part of their domestic politics. So these are not foreign policy issues. Now, I don't think any American general, or for that matter, even President Biden, actually wants a full scale war. Wars
Hmm.
are very untidy business,
Mhm.
very easy to start, extremely difficult to see through, and the end is usually extremely uncertain.
Yeah.
With rare exceptions, the pattern of global conflict has been to see prolonged war with a lot of death and destruction, but no result. So I don't
Hmm.
think anyone wants to have a full scale war. With regard to engagement, both the people, the Iranians and the Americans, know each other well. They have been engaged with each other. There are numerous channels to convey messages that they need to convey. I think there is reasonable understanding on both sides. Do recall here that while the sound and fury from Tehran is about hardliners and aggressive statements and very tough rhetoric and talk of the Islamic Revolution and things like that, they have the most crucial principle of Iranian strategic culture is
Hmm.
pragmatism. And that is where we miss it. Most discourse relating to Iran speaks of the hardliner this and hardliner that. But the Iranians have 2,500 years of strategic experience. Their archives
Hmm.
are full of precedents. They've been there, done that, seen it. They participated in major conflicts and, of course, are the source of extraordinary civilizational achievement. So they don't go into war because they are angry or they are bitter or they have been insulted. So I think that there is a very powerful pragmatic streak. What they have conveyed to the Americans is more important. They want the Israelis to stop, and that they want there should be a ceasefire. It should be a permanent ceasefire. There should be now rehabilitation, humanitarian assistance, rehabilitation, reconstruction. Go back to things as they were. This is the by the way the consensus in Washington as well. From all the
Hmm.
statements that you have seen, this is what the Americans believe in.
Does it
And there is
also
one
involve
person,
a two-state solution?
I don't think anybody is discussing a solution. What they are talking
Hmm.
about is this ceasefire. What
Okay.
will happen later is politics. What Netanyahu is talking about is such a ceasefire is not acceptable to him because it is not good for his political survival. He is
That's
a
right.
survivor. For him, the most important thing is survival. So, in that scenario, for him, a permanent ceasefire would be very difficult to accept. Very likely his coalition could fall apart because those extreme right wing people he has brought into his cabinet as ministers, they don't want to have any accommodation with the Palestinians. They want the war to go on. Also, there will be inquiries. You have already seen the surge of criticism from various sections of Israeli community of Israeli society talking about why did this happen to us. The whole point, if you have noticed, even about the Gaza conflict, it is a question of massive use of firepower on a civilian population.
Yeah.
There is no strategy. The Americans
That's true.
themselves have said there is no strategy because you don't have an end game. The Americans should know this because they got into Afghanistan and Iraq on exactly the same basis. Massive
Exactly.
firepower, massive murder of civilians, but no end game. So they were there for 20 years and nothing to show for it. So they understand
Yeah.
this. And that is the problem they have pointed out to the Israelis as well. That what do you want to achieve? Now, finally, what is the Israeli game plan? It's not Israeli, it's Netanyahu. Is that he wants to kill Shinwar.
Yeah.
Everything now depends on the killing of Yahya Shinwar. Because
That's right.
only then can Netanyahu tell the Israeli people, I won. If
I
you
got him.
remember what happened with George Bush Jr. when he destroyed the Taliban government and Al Qaeda in Afghanistan, and he said mission accomplished. Nobody believed him. Why? Because
Mm.
Osama bin Laden, Ayman Zawahiri, and Mullah Omar had not been killed, and they
Exactly.
survived for many years later. How do you tell your own people you won when you can't show the head of your opponent? For Netanyahu, this has become extremely important.
Yes.
That's
You
why he
remember a
went
few
after
weeks ago,
Ismail Hania's
The
family.
Israelis had said that we are going to catch him very shortly, and then nothing has happened since then. So it's got prolonged a bit. But he needs Yahya Shinwar. He talked about it. He made that his most important end game, and now he is not able to achieve. He needs this war to go on.
Yeah. Adi, would you come in on this?
Interesting question you've asked is backroom channels is very interesting. I agree with the ambassador when he says that Iran has a certain amount of pragmatism. I also know that for a factor that the US has been igniting a little bit of fire within Iran as far as the civil society is concerned. We've seen massive protests coming out with regards to the anti-hijab and a whole lot of things as far as the unrest is concerned. And we know there is a lot of Western influence which is creeping into Iran as far as the culture is concerned. There were recent videos that came out during Ramadan time where the Iranians were not actually following the government guidelines and stuff like that. So there is that resentment within, and the Iranians want to be connected with the mainstream world, which obviously they're smart people. They're educated, and some of them are really brilliant. So, and you look at the infrastructure that they built for themselves, fantastic. Secondly, I would also argue that the US would want Iran to be kind of in a doorstep again, right there. Don't move out from that area. Because as soon as Iran spreads its wings, then they have a problem. And as I said, the idea at a strategic level would be to break this axis. Now, as far as Israel and this thing is concerned, the back channel talks should have resulted in the release of the hostages, if they're still alive, that is. With all the bombing and with all the violence as it is in that area, I don't know whether they're still alive. So I
Apparently,
wonder.
33 of them, 33 of the 133 are no longer alive.
Yeah. So there's that factor as well. As far as this war is concerned, see what the Israelis have kind of messed up on is the ground. As Sir said, that there's the ground objective. Any military goes in, they've got a ground objective. They messed up in their tactics in certain places when they kind of did not know how to handle the tunnels. Right? They tried some very silly stuff. For example, filling up a tunnel full of sand with water right next
Yeah.
to an ocean. It would have drained out and gone back into the ocean. So it's difficult to fill up. They wasted a lot of time doing these kind of things because tunnel warfare is not easy at the end of it. They did not employ the technology that they needed. Today, they've started doing that. So I guess there would be some sort of retribution coming on the ground as far as the Israeli ground objectives, military ground objectives are concerned. I agree with Sir that Netanyahu has these interests, but I would also add that the globalists within America also have these interests to keep this war going. One of the biggest reasons is that the US can re-engage with this region very easily. Previously, if you remember, China had actually creeped in quite deeply into this
That's
region.
right.
Today, you see the US is completely sovereign, if I may use that word very loosely, as a head of the Middle East. I'll give you a small example. The US Saudi talks as far as the peace in this area is concerned. Now, this is very interesting. The US is also dealing with Iran in one hand with regards to, as the ambassador mentioned, of certain ceasefire. There's also a deal with the Saudis. So I see a strategic competition again between the Saudis and the Iranians who would kind of been able to get rid of this war. Now, whoever does it comes out as the leader of the region. I personally foresee Saudis as the guys. So the proposal that the US and the Saudis are working on is sign the deal with Israel
That's right. That's
and we
right. They
work
want
on
the
a solution.
Saudi-Israel deal to be done.
Yeah. So once that happens, as far as the security of this region is concerned, India steps in. You've got that IMEC coming up. You've got the I2U2, which Saudi will also join in. So in the future, you've got the Mediterranean covered up. Now, see, the US does not have the spread today to kind of hold the entire world as it used to. Somebody did an analysis and they realized they would need 800 destroyers just to patrol the world's ocean today. They don't have, they've got about 100, 80 or 100. They don't have it. So, what do they need? They need regional support, regional partners, and regional powers. So, let's look at that as a perspective. You've got Poland in the north with Finland and Sweden getting ready for the Arctic War. As the weather changes, the new sea routes open up. You've got that area. You've got Israel, which is going to get strengthened up because of this war. Whatever said and done, any war strengthens up a military quite hard, right? A certain nationalism comes up, that all happens. And this region might, I'm saying, might get settled out. That would be a surprise to me, but it might. You've got the Saudis building up.
So is that the reason? Is that the reason that ISIS Khorasan sent activated four Tajiks
Yeah.
to attack the Moscow,
Yeah.
theater?
So we'll come
And
to that.
they're calling Russia the Crusaders.
We'll come to
They've
that. So yeah, you've got the Saudis building up, you've got the Indians building up here, and you've got now Japan. There's a new
yes,
alliance between Japan and Philippines. So you've got,
yes.
so US is going to stand on the side with his 12 super carriers and 24 mini carriers and say, okay, tell me where's the fire, I'll come and put it out. It's a very
This is why
different sort of
AUKUS. This is why they've strengthened AUKUS by bringing in Japan.
yes. So he will try and create power centers around the world linked to him to try and kind of manage this situation. And these power centers will be built on certain strategic situations within the region, which these power centers are able to resolve or hold that.
The Philippines has been brought in as well because Ferdinand Marcos Jr.
Yeah.
Has gone back to his father's
Yes,
policy,
absolutely.
embrace
Now, I'd like to take you back
America.
to the point when ISIS was actually brought out, and I'm going to say that very clearly. I'm sorry if I sound a little brutal.
Yeah.
The emergence of ISIS was brought out to do a regime change within Syria, to go attack Bashar al-Assad. Right? The whole thing went for a toss, as it did with the Taliban, as it did with multiple such organizations, and it happens, most often when you have these proxies. They went out of hand, and it was the Russians who came and cracked the nut in terms of the ISIS, as far as the ISIS is concerned in Syria. ISIS got disbanded, and post the Americans kind of left Afghanistan, a lot of the ISIS fighters, including the ETIM, which are the Uyghurs, which have battle-hardened 6,000 chaps, have been brought into northern Afghanistan and certain areas of Pakistan. As far as these attackers are concerned, my intelligence and my sources tell me these guys had trained in a place called Bannu. I'm sure we are aware of it in Pakistan.
Yes.
Close to a river, which is in northern KPK. These guys are not ISIS chaps. They are Tajiks that have been picked up that used to work in Russia, by the way. Their visas had expired, and Turkey has a deal with Russia to kind of renew such visas at a cheaper cost. Otherwise, they have to go back to their country, and it's the whole tamasha there. So Tajikistan is too far off, Turkey is close by, so they take flights and all that. They took a flight from Turkey into Pakistan, went into these regions. The trainer's name allegedly is Solomon Khorasani, who is one of the big trainers of ISISK. He's fought in Syria, he's fought in Iraq, so he's quite the game. The game was to get these guys back into Turkey, smuggle them out into southern Russia, into a city called Inguchetia, which is on the border of Georgia. They drove across, wanted to do this. The idea was to get them out into Ukraine. That's why Putin keeps mentioning Ukraine. The guys were supposed to get out of Ukraine and come out and come back into Turkey and out back into Afghanistan or Tajikistan, wherever they went, to get their money. Because it was a money game. They were supposed to be given some 5 million rubles and this and that and all that, pittance. So this is what I see. And the emergence of ISIS KP in this region is very interesting to me, because here is a Pakistan which is known. And now there's an article, there are 5 articles that have been written by Ahsanullah Hassan, who was the
Mm.
spokesperson of the TTP in the Sunday Guardian. And he talks about the there are 3 Pakistani army people, and this is confirmed to me by some of my Afghan friends as well, who are looking after the leadership of ISIS. And these guys are being used as strategic weapons against the Taliban, was the idea. But now that scope has been expanded. Now Americans don't deal with these guys directly because they have a beef. So that's why the game of Pakistan comes out, and you find Pakistan suddenly getting money. They got $450 million to use for their what? F-16s? Anthony Blinken with Bilawal
Yes, right.
Bhutto. F-16s being used against Iran and Afghanistan. Anti-terror
That's right.
organization,
That's right.
anti-terror operations. So it all kind of starts making a link. And we all know since about 2021 October, Pakistanis have been supplying weapons and ammunition to Ukraine.
That's true.
Apart from that, the strategic nature of Pakistan would be to roll back China. That's why the attack on China. And
On the Chinese workers in Gwadar and
nobody in the
Balochistan.
region has come out and said, we've done it. Normally, these terrorist organizations are sincere in that way that they come out and say, yeah, I did it. None of these guys have come out and given a notification that this was done by us or not. If you look at the BLA or the TTP, they've got this beautiful letter that they put out. I love the fonts that the BLA uses. They've got nice green shades and stuff like that. They come out and say it. They didn't do that for the Chinese. And that's very curious. And you
Yeah,
look
that
at
is.
the Chinese reaction after that, they've shut off one plant. They've done a force majeure on another project. They are asking to put their own troops inside, which will give more targets, which is interesting to me.
Yeah.
So there is reactions there as well. And the
So basically,
Pakistanis is very different.
ISIS-K is being used to push China out of the region
So
back to the South China Sea.
what confirms this is Maryam Nawaz Sharif's statement. She turns around and says these Chinese gets very restless when we talk to them about security. They don't listen to us. So it's their fault.
Yes, you could say that. Yeah. Yeah. If I can just come back to Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad, not so much on ISIS KP, but as much as India, abstaining at the United Nations, when the United Nations Human Rights Council, tabled that resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire. 28 countries actually voted in favor of it. So I was just looking at India's engagement. I mean, I understand what it's doing with Pakistan. I understand what it's doing with Afghanistan. I'm sure we all do. We're talking because we're not talking or talking depending on, our respective vote banks and so on. But Iran and Israel are a completely different kettle of fish, especially Israel. In that United Nations Human Rights Council, we did actually go for the fact that Palestine should be there should be resolution of the Palestinian state. But are we coming across as a nation that has abandoned Palestine, and are backing Israel, whatever it does?
I think the Indian position is a little more nuanced than that. As you see, the voting record when we had the vote in the UNGA just now, calling for the immediate ceasefire, India supported the resolution. We are spending too much time looking at the voting record of a country that has placed itself on the margins of most important issues in world affairs. We don't have any contribution to make, any significant, initiative. We have today decided as a nation, in terms of our leadership, to focus on matters at home. And that is what is happening. And now we are in an election mode anyway. So I don't think you should be spending so much of your time looking at this voting record or that. There's no consistency, there is no pattern, because there is no policy. There's no policy whatsoever. Whether we support, and I have argued, and I'm going to say this once more, and it really distresses people. Who cares in the world today? Because we have so carefully erased ourselves that I have said many times that no one in the world is waiting with bated breath to hear what India has to say. It just doesn't matter. Our relationship with all entities in West Asia is, as I have said, bilateral and transactional. And that pattern has continued and is going to continue to the extent it benefits the Indian corporate sector. What we have done is what I call the corporatization of Indian foreign policy, that there are initiatives taken, certain relationships are maintained, certain joint statements are signed, and really speaking, we open the door for the corporate sector. And that is the pattern that has consisted. Even I to you too, if you see the joint statement of the foreign ministers, it speaks of the private sectors of the countries pursuing certain initiatives in different areas. And with regard to the so-called Mediterranean connectivity, it's one of those absolutely mindless American initiatives which has no basis in reality, competing with Belt and Road 10 years after, trying to forcibly bring Haifa into the picture and trying to say that, look, you have a new link. The railway system in the Gulf and the Arabian Peninsula will come up when it wishes. There is no progress whatsoever over the last 15 years. As far as the rest of most of Asia is concerned, we are using the Red Sea to link with the Mediterranean and with Europe. We don't need Haifa for that. We don't need the railway system for that. This was why it happened. The Americans were absolutely stunned by the Chinese success in bringing Iran and
Hmm.
Saudi Arabia together. And they
Yeah,
felt
yeah.
this desperate desire to be relevant and come up with some ideas. And they chose the G20 platform for the side agreement. They had pleased India by agreeing to the joint statement of withdrawing some of their remarks relating to Ukraine and Russia, accepted the joint statement, and in return got on board all these other countries. The countries concerned have no problem in signing any document, knowing full well nothing is going to happen. There is no strategic content because there is no strategic vision, there is no long term policy. These are just spontaneous events that take place which are disconnected from each other. In any case, the Gaza war has ended that for the time being. Now, what the Americans are looking for as of now, again, I would say anchored in unreality, is a grand bargain in the region.
Hmm. That's
Israel
right.
accepts the two state solution. So Palestine is offered, or at least commits itself irrevocably to the two state solution. Saudi Arabia then normalizes ties with Israel, and a very beautiful coalition is formed in West Asia against what Anik had talked about, the New World Order. The New World Order, as they see it, is Russia, China, and Iran are arranged, and this is the American vision. But actually, where are the Americans are getting it wrong is because the region has moved on. Not one country in the region accepts this American initiated binary. They don't want a new Cold War. They don't see themselves as participating in this binary where we against them. They are all looking at a multipolar order. All the countries that we have been talking about, except Israel, all the countries we've been talking about are committed to strategic autonomy. All of them in the Gulf and the West Asian Arab countries want to have close ties with Russia and with China. They don't want to be part of any coalition. They want to be close to all of these countries for various very substantial reasons. It is the Americans who are constantly pushing them to be part of this new Cold War binary, and it's not
Yeah.
working at all.
That's right.
May
That's
I
right.
add something to
Adi, if
what
I can
Sir
come to
said?
you.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
like
yeah,
to. I
please
mean, Sir
do.
has mentioned something very interesting. See, as far as the participation of the region is concerned, I agree with Sir as far as the strategic autonomy is concerned, because this is like the new kind of cool trend to be as far as countries are concerned, and you can see this, if I may use the word loosely, virus going through the world as a matter of fact, and every country wants to stand up for its own interests, which is the most beautiful thing that has happened in this part, I think, the 21st century, because this will bring about an individualism which was missing in the world till now. It was very binary, us versus them, as Sir said. And I remember George Bush's dialogue to Pakistan: either you're with us or you're against us. Those days have gone. And what I also mentioned, as a matter of fact, power centers is basically a multipolar order. If you don't have that multipolar order, you will not be able to kind of keep the world in a certain shape or size, and you will have these conflicts. One of the biggest reasons that you have these conflicts is the withdrawal of America and showcase of weakness in Afghanistan. The terrible showcase of weakness that was shown in Afghanistan, and the way that the withdrawal happened was not reminiscent of
Yeah, the way that
Vietnam.
ISIS KP, created that huge bomb thing,
Yep.
when troops were
So
actually evacuating. That's what I want to get to. I want to get to, I mean, this whole world order, disorder, how whatever you call it. It's also knocking on our doors. I mean, is there
Yep.
a danger that ISIS KP could actually, if it is training in Banu, it could actually, and Khorasan includes India. So, and this time,
So
when the Pakistani Prime Minister visited Saudi Arabia, he brought up Jammu and Kashmir again. I mean, predictably, but this time the Saudi Crown Prince actually did sort of draw a line and said it should be a bilateral conversation. But the danger here is that Pakistan is losing control of its badlands. It's losing control of the Taliban, and it's losing control over, monitoring ISIS KP. Could it
he never
spill
had
over into our country?
he never had control over the Taliban. So that was a dream that the Pakistanis had, and I don't think they ever had it. India's position is interesting because I guess by being on the margin, one opportunity I see for us going into the future, and where, uh, as far as these wars are concerned, and I'll come to the internal situation as well, because there's been a big development as we speak with regards to the Rameshwaram blast as well. So we'll talk about
Mhm.
that. India's position is interesting because I find ourselves to be in a place where you would be able to talk to both the sides. And that's something of a display that we saw with the Ukraine Russia situation, because both of them, I think the only single agreement that they had was, please come here, let's talk. Even Kuleba's visit, the foreign minister of Ukraine, his visit to India was trying to figure out how we can fix the date. What else does Ukraine have to offer us, except for we've bought whatever we had to as far as the defense little bit industry is concerned? We've done that. So we've done all that, and there is a lot of to and fro which is happening there. So I feel we would have this opportunity going forward, even in Ukraine. And if this thing doesn't get resolved, I think we should be able to garner that opportunity and convert it into a strength, even in Iran and Israel is concerned, because you're again one of the few countries that can talk to both the sides. So that's interesting. If we play our cards well, you should be able to come up on top. As far as this thing is concerned, ma'am, ISIS does not need place for recruitment or place for training. ISIS is a mindset, and the mistake that the ISIS made before was to garner land. And that is something that they've kind of realized today, that if we are a free flowing, freewheeling organization, more or less living in the shadows, sending out a 30-page booklet every 30 days. I'm sure, I don't know if you've seen that. It's a fantastically written booklet. I read it every month when it comes out. It talks about India. It talks
I'm glad
about
you haven't joined ISIS
no.
after reading it.
I keep a track, because at the end of it, see, one of the biggest things that I see as a pattern, as a matter of fact, the first day that the Rameshwaram blast happened, I called it out. It's in my Twitter, and I said, "This is ISIS." Everybody said, "No, no, no. This is some local element. This, that, this, Hizbul, this, Hizbul, whatever." But it turns out it is ISIS. Both the guys were affiliated to this thing. They've been caught today in West Bengal, trying to escape. Guess where?
That's right.
Into Bangladesh. To whom? The Jamaat. What is happening with the Jamaat? The India Out campaign. So you see, it's a crazy pattern that is falling across. And yes, the threat is real. There is just no question. Because ISIS, as long as it does not see itself in a geographical area, it does not believe in borders. When it does not believe in borders, then it's a very. You had
So,
a chap in Kolkata some time ago. He wrote on his LinkedIn page, and he was arrested, that I am a proud follower of ISIS, and I want to kind of dethrone the government and throw everything off. He wrote that on LinkedIn. So it's a mindset more than a geographical space. They are currently occupying that geographical space because they are needed to fight Afghanistan, to probably hit China, to probably hit Iran and create that nonsense. They've been given that little province, that Nangarhar province, which is in the north. And towards this side, you have the Kosh, the Kosh Patrika area where there's a lot of all these chaps which are there. And of course, in Balochistan. Today, we also know ISIS is coordinating with Jundallah. ISIS is
That's
coordinating
right.
with the BLA.
So
But
the
ISIS,
whole point is that India then is caught in a
yeah,
strategic trap, so to
it's a
speak,
tough stop. Yeah, you've got
because
you've got
we've
Maldives, and
got
I don't know if a lot of people know about the president of Maldives. A little history, little secret. His wife is the sister of the head of the radical Islamic organization within Maldives, who's conducted 37 terror bombings within Maldives.
that's
He's
shocking.
been actively working to get his ISIS guys. By the way, Maldives was the highest per capita contributor to ISIS. He is working with the Syrians to repatriate them, the only country in the world. Why? When he was the mayor of Male, when the yoga event happened, it was under him that event was disrupted.
At the Indian embassy.
Right? So there is a pattern. You look at what's happening in Bangladesh. You look at what's happening in Nepal as far as the protests that happened last month. Why did they start? Because of radical elements who went in and created ruckus. You look at what's happening in Pakistan. This is a pattern which is emerging in the entire region. And I read China quite a bit. The Chinese are worried. They've opened 2 bases in Tajikistan on the lip of the Wakhan to keep a track of these ETIM guys coming inside. They're bribing the nose out of the Taliban to keep these ETIM chaps back. This is a threat which is going to emerge once again. It's called the cycle of terror. And this cycle of terror changes its style every 40 years. So we've had enough of these territorial terror groups. You will have these free-flowing terror groups that will create chaos. What's happening in Europe, in various different countries today. So I feel it's a
That's
serious
true.
threat, and we need to change the tact by the way we understand this sort of terrorism. This is borderless, it's connectless, it is leaderless, it is divided into open cells. So if you can take out one chap, the other guy doesn't even know, he's not connected. They have their own purpose, their own motive. They are self-radicalized. That is even more dangerous because they've got that gumption. They're not going there. Like in Pakistan, the ISISK pays 10,000 rupees extra than the TTP. Right? So
That's
anybody who's
fascinating.
dissuaded from there, they just join ISIS. So it's a lot to do with daily money as well. But
That's
here,
interesting.
a guy who gets self-radicalized, this is the most dangerous element that you can find because these are lone wolves that can go off anywhere. So it's a real threat.
But I still don't understand why Russia was a target. If it has links, if it was building, links with Iran and
It was.
China.
So that's a message to Russia. Firstly, look inwards. If you have proxies like people doing stuff in Africa, in Niger and stuff like that, you've got your Wagner there doing stuff. We also have options to kind of make you look inward. Secondly, please don't get so close to Hamas. See, I mean, I have my sympathies with the people of Gaza. I have no sympathies with the people of Hamas. So please don't do that. That was a clear message. And the second clear, if you see the online trends in Russia, people are very scared of this. The
I'm running out
radicalization.
of time.
Yeah.
I've only got another 2 minutes, so if we can wrap up. So, do you believe that there's in India, Israel, Russia, Iran tango? I mean, not Russia so much, but Israel, tango is a misstep on India's part. I mean, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed and Adi, if you can both
You are
come in
talking
and
about Iran, Israel, US. disengage.
Iran, Israel, India. Yes.
Yes. So my sense is, see, the outlook is extremely uncertain, even as I speak to you. I wish I could speak with greater confidence, but I'm not able to, try as I might, because the uncertainties are too many. What will be the terms of the truce? If it's a 6 week truce and there is an exchange of hostages and prisoners, what happens after 6 weeks? Will the Israelis back off and allow a status quo ante to emerge? Given what tough statements is Netanyahu made about annihilation of Hamas, he might be able to claim annihilation if he's able to kill Shinwar. But if he doesn't kill Shinwar, there's going to be a bit difficult for him. So, what are the
Hmm.
terms on which you will have a long-term ceasefire? I dare not say permanent, long-term ceasefire. I don't know the terms. What will be the implications of this in Israel? What will be the implications of this in Gaza and in the Palestine Authority in general? Will you be able to get a statement from a responsible Israeli leader committing Israel to a two-state solution, a Palestinian state? Because that is what the Saudis have demanded.
That's right.
Irrevocable, irreversible, and irrevocable. Two-state a
Hmm.
statement. They
Hmm.
want a statement so that they can tell their own people that we have obtained the state. And it has to be time bound. It has to be time bound. Will you get such a statement? Now, we have not seen such a statement from a single Israeli leader in 30 years. Even Rabin. I don't think Rabin was committed to, because there are messianic elements here. So the Americans, then much of this is linked with the American elections. What do we
Yes.
do?
Yes.
The Americans are
Absolutely.
desperate to win. They are desperate. Biden is desperate to win, and he's looking bad. So you have the American election. Will things change after the election? So that's another element of uncertainty for you.
That's another six
Biden
months
number
away
two or Trump number two,
or more.
you're looking at a very, very different scenario. So for all these reasons, I would say that I really cannot tell you what will be the scenario. Will there be a permanent ceasefire? You ask me. I really don't.
Adi, what
To
do you think is the?
I agree with
I'm
Sir
not.
that
I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about the ceasefire per se. I'm talking about the spillover of this conflict into a wider conflagration. Do you think
I
India
don't
will?
think I don't think that'll happen because there's no appetite for a larger war. You don't see any build-ups. You don't see any purchase of military equipment. You don't have all that stuff. And one of the things
We're selling our military equipment, aren't we?
we are selling to Armenia. So what I feel is lateral escalations, right? I mean, I call that we are already in World War III because World War II had 52 battles happening. We have, I think, 60. So there would be lateral escalations. I won't be surprised if Armenia or Azerbaijan go at it because that's another place where Iran, Israel meet. That's another place where Russia, America meet. That's another place where China meets. So that's another confabulation where the sides are literally the other way around. Iran supports a Christian country where Israel supports a Muslim country. And America and Russia and Iran find themselves on the same side with India. And,
That's
so
quite fascinating.
it's quite a funny thing. Armenia is supported by Russia, America, Iran, India. Azerbaijan is supported by China, Pakistan, Turkey, and Israel. So you might have a lateral escalation here and there. But I don't think a larger war will happen because I don't think there is an appetite for it. Plus, economically, I don't think the region is ready for it. You don't have Lebanon, which is capable of doing much. You don't have Jordan, which is pretty much a vassal state of Israel, can do much. The Egyptians need the Israelis. As a matter of fact, the Egyptians owe about $25 billion, if I'm not correct, towards the Israelis. So they're gonna toe the line. So Israelis at the moment find themselves in a little bit of a regional kind of supremacy where they should be able to kind of wean off a little bit of a pressure. And that's one of the reasons why they've been able to wean off a lot of pressure that came to them from the world, because in the region, one, there is no appetite. Two, there is no capability of war. You've got the Saudis that are sick and tired of this entire regional conflict. They want to calm things down. They want to kind of progress. They want to get rid of a whole lot of stuff. That's one of the reasons why they linked up with the Iranians and said, let's calm down. Let's not do this. End the war in Yemen. Come to a settlement. As a matter of fact, there was a difference between the Saudis and the Emiratis as far as Yemen is concerned, the central and the southern and this and that. But they're all kind of calming down. Having said that, the wild card entry is always there. A stupid, badly timed terror attack in the wrong place, just
At the
like
wrong time.
at the wrong time, could flare up, and that's the end of it. But currently, if nothing of as so-called black swan events, as the Indian Army chief put it across a couple of days ago, nothing of that sort happens. I think the war will drag on. Uh, I agree with sir that the next administration would probably try and sort this out. They would try and get to a ceasefire so that in the elections you can at least say that, listen, I've kind of calmed this down. There's no more killing happening now. Get some points with
Thank
that.
you.
Balance the situation out somehow while you move forward. That's what I see, because ending a war today is not something anybody's capable of.
So let's hope that the two of you are right and there will be no war to end all wars. Thank you very much, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed, for coming
Thank
on
you.
the show. Thank you, Adi
Thank
Arjun,
you.
for taking part in Global
Thank you
Express.
so much.
Do click on the new Indian Express and share the icon.